is actually our title for today, not our theme. So I say Happy Easter to all who are gathered here and to all who are joining us, family. We love you, we appreciate you, and we thank God for you. Today we're concluding our March series, That's How We've Never Done It. And our topic is Don't Go Back to Sleep. You know, as part of my marketing strategy, I encourage everyone, especially our virtual community, to sign up to receive our newsletter. And I'm going to add to that request that you read the newsletter. And the reason that I'm asking you to read the newsletter, our editor includes a very inspirational blog. And in this current issue, I read this: Happy Easter. We will be celebrating the deeper meaning of the Easter holiday this Sunday, but we're keeping it brief for those who plan to spend this special time with family and friends. And you know, quite often we respond with a letter to the editor. We respond to the editor. And so my response to the editor this morning is, I will follow your lead and keep it brief. Today we are concluding the recognition of Women's History Month. And even though this is the conclusion of the official or public recognition of the significant contributions of women, we know that there is still work to be done. This month, excuse me, I have highlighted the contributions of women to the world that are frequently overlooked, or sometimes not as frequently remembered as some who are more prominent in the limelight, if you will. And so today I ask us to consider inspirational women who have influenced our individual lives. And I would like to acknowledge and celebrate three magnificent, outstanding, fabulous women who influenced my life, beginning with my mother, Delania Franklin Anderson Collins. And then moving on to my beloved spouse, Greer Brannon Collins, and my mother-in-law, Jeannie Miles Brannon, all who live on in memory. These powerful women and many others shared their unique wisdom and inspiration and guidance with me, and has had a nurturing and impacting and lasting indelible imprint, if you will, on my life. Try to string all of those words together. Today also, March 31st, is the celebration and the recognition of Transgender Day, Expressions of Divinity. Spiritual leader Dr. Edward Villaume says this: our teaching, our Science of Mind teaching of oneness and wholeness, creates the moral compass and welcoming environment that affirms transgender people as exquisitely individualized expressions of divinity and celebrates their unique contributions to society. And so as part of the intention of not only our center, the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living, but the intention of our global community, the Centers for Spiritual Living, we place a very high value and practice on inclusivity. And so it's an opportunity to recognize each individual contribution and the gift that each person brings to the world and to our society. And of course, today is Easter, and in some traditions is known as Resurrection Sunday. And I offer this from Sylvia Haynes, and she says, Easter is not about the crucifixion. It's not about the ones jabbing spears or the ones who are pounding the nails. The whole point is the resurrection and the incredible strength and beauty that rises up because of the challenge. When we remember who we truly are, overcome our sense of littleness and separation, and stop crucifying others and ourselves, we too can work wonders and spread healing and light in the world. Your resilience is your brilliance. And Easter is every moment you choose to step into the truth of who you are. And she also adds, Jesus demonstrated this. And I know in some of our Science Mind communities, when we mention the name Jesus, it kind of sucks the air out of the room. And I don't understand why that is, because we have the ability to honor and include all of the other great teachers and avatars and masters. And yet, and it could be because, depending on the traditions that we may have come from, we were wounded by Jesus, or the perception of Jesus that was taught in that tradition. But we include Jesus also as a master teacher, as an avatar, as our spiritual brother. And so let's look at resurrection for a moment. A congregant shared with me a very timely article from Time magazine about the resurrection, indicating that it is often associated with life after death. However, this is not its essential meaning. Ernest Holmes wrote in the Science of Mind textbook on page 310, paragraph 5, the Bible boldly declares that death and resurrection are inventions of the human mind and are not decreed by the Almighty. Interesting note. These are not decreed by the Almighty. And he goes on to add in the Science of Mind textbook on page 413, paragraph 2, the resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. Resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. And what happened is that we awoke to life. And so this is one of the basic premises of our teaching, is that we are awake to life. We are awake and alive in the spirit is sometimes words that we say, and I believe those may be the lyrics in one of the songs in our vast repertoire of music. Spiritually, resurrection means the stone of fear and doubt is rolled away from our hearts. And as a result of that, we embrace justice and mercy, compassion and grace for ourselves and for others. It reminds us that this is a journey and not a destination. And the work continues as the path leads onward. And when we set the intention to stay conscious, to live from love, and to continue to embrace infinite possibilities, that's where the magic happens. Resurrection means that we are now awake, so don't go back to sleep. Thank you, Rumi, for that reminder. When we look at current world events that demand we address them from a higher perspective and an evolutionary possibility, the news that we're bombarded with, the sources that we receive our news from, alert us to many of the fear-based beliefs and behaviors that we thought were discarded decades ago. And I don't need to list them. We can identify them each from our own perspective, from our own point of view. What we now realize is, rather than being healed and released, these fear-based beliefs and behaviors have been temporarily shelved deeper into the collective human consciousness. To effectively heal and release, we must set the intention to stay awake to the truth of who we are. It all comes back to remembering the truth of who we are. We are one with the divine. We are individualized expressions of the divine, and we're having our experience through the divine. As we intentionally dive deeper into the teachings and practices of Science of Mind, we become more aware that situations in our outer experience cannot be solved by pointing our fingers out there. And if you notice, when we point a finger out there, we have one finger that is pointing out, and we have four that are pointing back to us. Just maybe do that as an illustration. Point your fingers. Just point a finger and notice. You have one that is out, and you have four that are back. So Where's the responsibility for the change? Within each and every one of us. Our spiritual practices, our inner work, help us to recognize that current events are cries for help and healing at a deeper level. I remember many years ago at one of the Asilomar conferences, Dr. Michael Beckwith, who is the spiritual leader of the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, he was closing out the Saturday morning session of the Asilomar conference. And what he offered to us was that upon arising in the morning, we do our spiritual practices. We do our prayer work, we do our meditation, we do our affirmations, we do our spiritual reading, whatever it is that grounds us and gets us settled for the day. And then the next thing that we're to do is to go and pick up the newspaper and glance just at the front page. We don't have to go past the front page. Glance at the front page. Those are our prayer requests for that day. And that's how we can look at what is happening in the world of effect around us today. Those are the prayers and the cries for help and for healing at a much deeper level. And so when faced with outer experiences, we often ask, how can this be resolved? And the correct question is, what is required for resolution? And the answer is practice, practice, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Spiritual leader Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones writes this in his book, The Art of Being, on page 178. Your entire life is a sacred experience. So you can go through life looking for an experience out there, or you can awaken to the fact that you are a spiritual experience, wherever you are and whatever you are doing. So that again is another way of saying that there is no separation between God and us. We create this illusion of duality, if you will, when we drop into that human experience and often forget that we are individualized expressions of spirit, and wherever we are that spiritual representation. So it is our work to be that healing presence. This is one of the things that we do in the practitioner administered licensing, not the licensing renewal, but the renewal of vows. We say, yes, I am a healing presence. And that is true wherever we are. And that applies not only to the licensed practitioners, but to all of us who practice the teachings of this philosophy. We are a healing presence. The resurrection experience invites us to become more aware of the layers of the onion that are to be peeled away. And I offer this as an illustration. Vladimir Horowitz, one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century, suffered antagonizing stage fright before every public performance. This experience caused him to retire from the stage completely and to turn to only studio recordings for decades. He may have known the greatness of his gift, yet in those pre-concert moments, other thoughts and feelings held sway. And so I ask, where in our own individual lives, do we find that moment or hour or day where we are alive and living fully immersed in the truth of our oneness, knowing that divine love living itself in and through and as us? And then in the next moment, or the next hour, or the next day, we're immersed in old constructs of fear, less than, and who do you think you are? So that's where we slip into that duality, when we temporarily forget that we are one with this love that lives itself in and as and through us. Resurrection opens us to the power of a new idea. Human nature always yearns for new ways to comprehend and embody its place in the infinite. Science of mind isn't anything new. New thought isn't anything new. We call it new thought, but it's actually ancient wisdom. Ernest Holmes and other great thinkers throughout history have each brought their perspective to the conscious evolution of our divine humanness. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul wrote this in Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And as a part of our transformation, we continue to awaken and respond to the call of our individuality and our collective recognition of being the place where everyone experiences a world that works for them exactly where they are. Each moment is an opportunity for a new idea because it finds us at a crossroad of our journey. Returning to a favorite book or a movie after some years away may reveal unexpected insights. For me, it's going back to the Science of Mind textbook. And I have a textbook that I use for class when I was taking the classes leading up to ministerial training. And when I opened that book, I've got all kind of highlighting in there, different colors of highlights. And I look at some of those areas that I highlighted and I go, where was my thinking? What was my thought? What was my consciousness at that point? And then I have a second Science of Mind textbook. Actually, it was a gift from my late wife. And she gave it to me with the condition that I could not mark it up. And I'm glad she placed that condition on it, and I continue to honor that because when I am preparing for a talk or preparing for a class or just doing my own private study, I can open that unmarked textbook at random. And it may be a passage that I've read several times, and yet there's something new that reveals itself in that moment. So I'm not saying that you have to have two sets of books, but it's sometimes in going back to something that is familiar to us, we gain new insights as long as we're not attached to what the previous experiences were. And so each moment is an opportunity for a new idea, a fresh approach. And this fresh approach inspires us and motivates us and sometimes pushes us into a new understanding and awareness of the truth of who we are. And so our call to action this morning, resurrected and awakened in consciousness of the truth of our true identity as divine human beings, we now heed Rumi's exhortation, don't go back to sleep. We surrender to the divine intelligence of the indwelling love and wisdom, and we listen to its message. And when we step out, we step up and we step forward in consciousness. Spirit-centered action then becomes our motivating goal. Spirit-centered action. We're the change we wish to see in the world. We're the love we wish to see in the world. Together, grounded in that divine power and promise working in us, through us, and as us, we transform the world. And I conclude with this quote by Ernest Holmes from Creative Mind on page 69, paragraph 2. Wake up. Your world is all powerful. Your word. Wake up. Your word is all powerful. Your consciousness is one of omnipotence. Your thought is infinite. Your destiny is eternal. And your home is everlasting heaven. Let us say together now our affirmation for this week. I embrace the infinite possibilities as I live the love I am. Let's say that again. I embrace infinite possibility as I live the love that I am. And so in living this love that I am, what I know to be true is that there is only one power for good in the universe. This all-prevailing presence of spirit that is always a presence and never an absence. And so as I align myself, as I unify myself with this presence, always remembering that it lives and moves and has its being through me and as me. I affirm and declare this is to be the truth for all things and all beings everywhere on this planet and beyond. This creative intelligence that creates out of itself but is not absorbed by its creation is that which guides each and every activity of my life and the collective life of all who are gathered this morning and also are viewing on demand. And so I speak my word of blessing this morning for all people in all places, honoring all paths where people are gathering in the name and nature of love, knowing that love has many different definitions that are applied to it. And I know that as we travel this journey of life, sometimes we are traveling parallel to one another, and sometimes we reach that fork in the road, and our paths go a different direction. But it is at those intersecting points where only love prevails. Only love prevails. And it's at that intersecting point where there is an opportunity to drop whatever the judgment or criticism or erroneous ideas we have about ourselves or about someone else and see the pure essence of love that is revealing itself in and through and as all things. And on this Easter day, on this Resurrection Sunday, I speak my word for a new beginning, being awake and alive to the infinite possibilities that the universe holds. I set the intention to step into the awareness of my greatness. And I invite all of those who are sharing this experience right here and right now to set that intention also, to step into the greatness of who you are, knowing that everything is unfolding in divine, right, and perfect order. And I speak my word this morning for those who are experiencing transitions in life. However those transitions are showing up, maybe it's the transition of a loved one who has stepped into the new dimension, that unknown. Maybe it is the request or the desire for right livelihood. However that outpictures. It could be the beginning of a business, the expansion of a business, right and perfect employment with the right and perfect compensation that provides for all needs. Transition in an intimate relationship, an opportunity to let go of that which is no longer present, to be at peace with oneself, and to recognize that I am never alone because I am always one with this infinite presence. There are times where I may appear and experience loneliness or seek companionship or seek those intimate conversations, and yet I am not alone. And for those desires that are in the recesses of our heart, which may be spoken or unspoken, I know that the answer is yes. And so for this and for so much more, I am truly grateful. Releasing this word back into that law, which always says yes, I just let it be. And I invite you to affirm this with me if any of what I have said resonates with you in any way by saying, and so it is. And so it is. And now is our opportunity to celebrate and to participate in the divine flow of circulation. otherwise known as offering time. You know, we sometimes downplay the importance of physical coins as part of the life experience. And sometimes we have this, and this definitely is not true of our Monterey Center. We do have and demonstrate and practice a high prosperity consciousness here at the center, and I am grateful for that. However, there are times when there is an unawareness, I would say, of what is required to operate a program like this, where we are dependent on donations and there is an expectation of a return on your investment. And so to the level that you invest, that allows us to produce a return to the level of that investment. And so with gratitude, I thank each one of you for your continuing support of our community. And we have an affirmation of abundance. I invite us to say that together. I recognize the presence of God within as a source of my abundance. Out of my abundance consciousness flows everything I could desire in life. With gratitude and thanksgiving, I now participate in the flow of uninterrupted abundance. This prosperous experience is evidence of my abundance consciousness. And so it is. And for those who are here in the center this morning, you may leave your donations in the donation box that is on the table in our hospitality area. Thank you for those contributions. Thank you for those who mail in contributions. It's always refreshing to pick up the mail and find those blessings in the mail. There's also an opportunity to text to give. That text number is on our screen, 831-246-9694. And we're also grateful for our online donations, montereycsl.org donate. And while you're on the website making your donation, if you're not a subscriber to the newsletter, please do so. And just be aware of what is happening here in our spiritual community, the collective spiritual community, and also help us to spread the word that God is love, and we are all expressions of this divine love. And just a few community connections to share with our community. We are still in the season for nonviolence. I believe the season concludes on the 4th, which is Thursday. For those of you who have been following along, 65 days and 65 ways, we invite you to continue that practice. We're continuing to celebrate our larger community. I'm searching for a word for our larger community of the Islamic faith who are practicing Ramadan. And Ramadan, I believe, concludes on April the 8th. Today is also April Fool's Day. No, tomorrow. I'm rushing the day. Tomorrow is April Fool's Day. There's a nice little tidbit about April Fool's Day in the newsletter that I invite you to go and read. I got this thing for the newsletter this morning for some reason. And we mentioned International Transgender Day, the Day of Visibility, which is occurring today. And for our virtual community, our on-demand community that are sharing this experience, we invite you to like, to comment, to share, and to spread the word that we are, each one of us is an example of God's love. And we invite you to join us next week where we will begin our April series, Giant Gentleness. And the topic is, Your Gentleness is Showing. And so we say good morning to our virtual on-demand community, knowing that we're all one in spirit.